As reported by Neil Wallace in this week's Farmers Weekly, meat exporters are preparing for trade disruptions in their key UK market, with the likelihood an exit agreement with the European Union will not be reached by the 31st December deadline. Government agencies are advising exporters to prepare for possible disruptions, congestion and delays at UK ports in the new year as these export processes, IT systems and export certificates are introduced. We're joined now by Sirma Karapeeva, CEO for Meat Industry New Zealand, on the phone. Sirma, this is really concerning. That was absolutely sliding into that deadline.
Hi Sarah, and yes, this is absolutely concerning. You're quite right about this. For us, this is very worrying for, I guess, two reasons. Firstly, we still have no clarity about what is going to happen on the 1st of January. It all depends on what sort of deal the UK and the EU strike between themselves, if at all they strike any kind of deal. And so we're living in a bit of a vacuum here, trying to figure out what trade's going to look like from the 1st of January, what the impacts are going to be like on our product getting into those two markets, and more importantly, what is it going to look like for UK product going into the EU? And I say this because if the UK cannot export its sheep meat into the EU because it's prohibitively expensive due to the EU tariff, that means that it has to stay in the UK and potentially will displace imported products like that from New Zealand. We still don't know, so it doesn't give us any certainty, and our companies are unable to plan with their customers to prepare for the next coming season of exports.
Between sheep meat and beef, is there any particular difference in which one is affected?
Both of those products are affected, and I say that because at the moment, New Zealand can export a certain amount of sheep meat and a much, much smaller amount of beef into the EU 28, including the UK, under what we call the country-specific tariff weight quotas that are inscribed in the WTO schedule for the EU. So we're allowed to export into these quotas. That gives us preferential access in terms of taking away, for example, for sheep meat, we trade at a zero tariff. For beef, we trade at a slightly lower tariff than what is applied otherwise to imports. What will happen on the 1st of January 2021 is that the EU and the UK have come to a unilateral decision to appropriate or to proportion those two quotas. So for sheep meat, they're taking a 50-50 split approach. And currently our quota is 228,000 tonnes. So essentially, from the 1st of January, we will be able to export 114,000 tonnes into the UK and the same amount into the EU, 114,000 tonnes. For beef, however, the situation is much, much worse. The quota as it currently stands is very small. It's only 1,300 tonnes. And then the unilateral decision between the EU and the UK has been to split it 60-40, 60 in favour of the UK and 40% in favour of the, 60% in favour of the EU and 40% in favour of the UK. And what that means is that our exporters will only be allowed to export something like 150 tonnes of beef into the UK, which is a ridiculously small amount. It's commercially unviable, and it essentially prevents us from filling any demand in that market.
What's the next step with the round of negotiations with the EU in particular?
Well, I mean, from what we understand, our government authorities and the government negotiators from Foreign Affairs and Trade have been doing the best that they can to get these two parties to the table to start discussing some kind of package or some kind of approach to alleviate our concerns arising from the split of these WTO quotas. To date, that discussion has been incredibly difficult, and my reading of the situation is that very little movement has been made. Now, the clock is ticking. We are middle of November, the 1st of January is right around the clock, and there's very little time for all three sides to sit down together and actually come up with some creative solutions that give effect to the objectives that the EU and the UK want to achieve through Brexit and splitting the quota, as well as to address the concerns that we have continuously raised with the fact that this approach of splitting the quota between these two markets is undercutting our commercial rights to trade into these markets.
Thank you so much for your time on the show. Sirma Karapeeva is the CEO there for Meat Industry Association, joining us to talk around this dire situation which is happening with the UK and the EU. Trade deals have not been completed and the quota split is very much not fair. It's going to the WTO. Exporters jumping up and down about this. Much more on this in this week's Farmers Weekly. Thank you to Neil Wallace for the story.
This is Sarah's Country.